Hi guys, it's Gabriella. Today I'm going to be discussing plant-based diets and why they should be integrated into correctional facilities to ensure the inmates have a healthy diet. We'll go over what exactly a plant-based diet is, some benefits and disadvantages along with the science behind it, and then discuss the reasons why we should want inmates to be healthy. I like to start by pointing out that everyone has different abilities, health issues, lifestyles, etc., that may make it harder or easier to eat plant-based. It is not a one-size-fits-all diet, but I'm going to be talking more generally for the average person. So, what is a plant-based diet? A plant-based diet is focused on fresh and less processed plant foods, with less of an emphasis on meat, eggs, and dairy products. It is not the same as vegan and lacto-ovo-vegetarian diets, which are basically forms of a plant-based diet. Vegans do not consume anything of animal origin, so no meat, fish, dairy, or eggs, while lacto-ovo-vegetarians do not consume meat or fish, but still consume dairy and or eggs to some extent. The key difference is that meat is not always completely excluded on a plant-based diet. Because of the various distinctions, there's a wide variety of pathways to follow on a plant-based diet, depending on which animal products are not consumed. Commonly, with the decrease of animal products, there's an increase in whole grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds in the diet. Another key aspect of plant-based diets are fortified products, which are foods that have extra nutrients added in order to combat nutrients that are commonly lacking on a vegan or vegetarian diet. There are also dietary supplements. Fortified products and supplements allow people to follow a diet that completely excludes animal products while still getting all the necessary nutrients, which may have not been possible in the past. Still, overall, the key to a healthy plant-based, vegan, or vegetarian diet is proper planning. Because a plant-based diet can vary greatly from person to person, the benefits and issues are not the same for everyone, just as people on omnivorous diets can be healthy or not healthy. It all depends on the individual's approach to a plant-based diet. Still, I will go over some common benefits as well as some issues. Having a diet with more plant foods and less meat can help in decreasing risk of health issues like cardiovascular disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and certain cancers. A plant-based diet is beneficial for health, not necessarily because no meat or animal products are consumed, but because a higher quantity of plant foods are consumed. Naturally, cutting out meat completely or eating less leads to eating more food from plants to make up for that loss. The main benefits of a plant-based diet stem from the decrease in saturated fat and the increase in fiber. This is due to a number of things that happen to come along with a plant-based diet, such as lower calorie consumption, saturated fat, and cholesterol, while consuming more vegetable protein, fiber, antioxidants, micronutrients, plant sterols, and polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fatty acids. Saturated fat, for example, comes from animal products, as well as palm and coconut oil, and is in processed foods. Fatty beef, lamb, pork, poultry with skin, cream, butter, and cheese all have saturated fat, so it makes sense that cutting out animal products will lower your body's levels of this. The structure of saturated fats have no double bonds between their carbon molecules, meaning they are saturated with hydrogen molecules and are solid at room temperature. These fats raise levels of LDL cholesterol in your blood, leading to a higher risk of heart disease and stroke. LDL is known as the bad cholesterol because it brings the cholesterol to your arteries where it can build up. HDL cholesterol is the cholesterol that helps clear the cholesterol to get it away from your arteries. So the other type of fat, unsaturated fats, are known as the healthy fats. These fats have double bonds, which break up the chain and lead to them being liquid at room temperature instead. They're also high in HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol. Omega-3 and 6 are unsaturated fats, as well as olive oil, canola oil, peanut oil, nuts, and avocados. So they're mainly plant sources. It's important to remember that most food is okay in moderation. and some saturated fats are better than others, but overall it is better to choose unsaturated fats over saturated fats, which is in line with a plant-based diet. As well, plant-based diets lead to increased fiber in the diet. Fiber is associated with lower blood pressure, plaque formation, and cardiovascular risk, and lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Fiber is the carbohydrate parts of plants that cannot be digested by the body. Fiber is in fruits, vegetables, oats, nuts, and seeds. The type of fiber you consume will have different effects. First one, soluble fiber, dissolves in water, which helps to slow down the absorption of nutrients, which ultimately is slowing down digestion. If the food is in your system for longer, you will feel more full and satiated for longer, which can help with weight loss. I'd like to point out that although weight loss can be beneficial to the health of some people, it's not always the case. It can be helpful in individuals who are overweight or obese, like at extremes, but as a rule, weight loss does not equal health. It's more important to feel full enough and satiated after meals. Insoluble fiber, on the other hand, does not dissolve in water, so it makes food pass through your system more quickly and doesn't necessarily help with feeling satiated, but it is helpful in making your digestive system run smoothly and regularly. Both soluble and insoluble fiber are necessary for normal digestive functions. A healthy plant-based diet is naturally abundant in fiber, so you can reap the benefits without even trying too hard. But just to reiterate, to benefit from a plant-based diet in a health perspective, it has to be planned adequately. Which brings me to my next point, the disadvantages of a plant-based diet. Some common deficiencies on a plant-based diet include the lack of calcium, vitamin D, vitamin B12, omega-3 fatty acids, zinc, and iron. As I mentioned before, fortified foods can be great to help combat these issues. It may seem difficult or unreasonable to be on a diet where you need to rely on extra fortified foods to get an adequate nutrient intake, but with how widely available fortified foods are, it is definitely possible. Although there may be some socioeconomic barriers to access to these products, like it being available at your local grocery store or wherever you do your shopping. For example, as my milk of choice, I drink oat milk, which happens to be vegan. If you look at the label, it's fortified with many vitamins and minerals, including 23% of your daily needs for calcium and 42% of your daily needs for vitamin B12 in 1 cup of this. So I don't drink it because it's fortified, but someone who may be vegan or vegetarian drinking this would benefit from these added nutrients that they may be lacking, and it's something that they would already drink anyway. They don't have to go out of their way to find something new. So now I'm going to go into a little more detail on some of these nutrients that may be lacking. There are special considerations that need to be made to ensure you are getting these, but for the most part, it is still possible to get an adequate intake of these without animal products. The first thing to consider is calcium, which is a mineral that is necessary for bone health. Plant-based individuals who are lacking calcium may have a lower bone density. The obvious sources of calcium come from milk and other dairy sources, although plant-based alternatives include green leafy vegetables, tofu, and tahini. When choosing plant-based foods for calcium, you also have to consider their bioavailability. So how much is absorbed from the body to make sure the calcium is actually usable. For example, oxalates reduce calcium absorption. Foods that are high in oxalates, such as spinach and Swiss chard, are not ideal for calcium, but low oxalate greens such as bok choy, broccoli, Chinese cabbage, collards, and kale are suitable choices for calcium. Although it may be easier to rely on foods fortified with calcium or dietary supplements when dairy is not consumed regularly. The next nutrient of concern is omega-3 fatty acid. Usually on a plant-based diet, no matter what extent of animal products you eliminate, it is rich in omega-6 fatty acids, but not always in omega-3s. This is because omega-6 fatty acids come from vegetable oils, nuts, and seeds, which are all staples of a vegan or vegetarian plant-based diet. But omega-3s come from fish oils, eggs, and algae. They are important for eye and brain function and cardiovascular health. It is important to consider where the omega-3 comes from and what form it is in. It is ideal to consume the DHA and EPA for omega-3s, which is in fish, eggs, and algae, as these two forms are able to be readily absorbed by the body. ALA, on the other hand, comes from plant sources and is not absorbed by the body as efficiently. Plant options abundant in ALA include ground flaxseed, walnuts, canola oil, soy products, and hemp seed beverages. The problem with ALA is that although it can be converted to APA and DHA, it is done so at a lower rate. Converting ALA to EPA is less than 10% and DHA is even less. This is because ALA comes with insoluble dietary fiber in plant foods, which is hard to digest. That means you have to consume much more of foods with ALA to hit your omega-3 goals to account for the poor absorption. The only plant-based choice that's not ALA is oil from brown algae, aka kelp, which has a suitable amount of EPA. Since algae is not a popular food choice, it is better to rely on either foods fortified with DHA or microalgae supplements if you are concerned about your omega-3 levels. If you are plant-based but still consume fish and or eggs, omega-3 shouldn't be too big of a concern depending on how much of your diet includes these. It is more of a concern for vegans or vegetarians who completely cut out options. Okay, so next is iron. Despite common belief, plant-based individuals are not any more at risk for iron deficiency than those who eat animal products more regularly. I feel like a lot of people assume they are, but that's just not true. But still, people who do not get iron from animals do need to consume 1.8 times more iron than those who do to reach the same goals. This is because heme iron, which is in the blood and muscle tissues from animals, is absorbed much more efficiently than non-heme iron, which comes from plant foods, such as beans, lentils, nuts, leafy greens, and whole grains. This is because non-heme iron is much more sensitive to inhibitors as well as enhancers of iron absorption. The downfall is that inhibitors such as phytates, calcium, and polyphenolics in tea, coffee, herb teas, and cocoa make absorption less efficient, so it is ideal to avoid these items with your iron-rich meals. The positive side is non-heme iron works well with enhancers, such as vitamin C, and plant-based diets already contain a lot of vitamin C, which will help increase iron absorption. It is beneficial to be conscious and plan to consume vitamin C-rich foods like broccoli, strawberries, oranges, and peppers with your iron-rich foods. If you aren't already, it is generally a quick and easy fix. Along with iron, there is vitamin B12, which vegans in particular are more likely to be deficient in. This is because no plant food naturally has any active B12. Vitamin B12 is in meat, fish, dairy products, and eggs. So if you are limiting these products to any extent, you might not be getting enough B12. That's why it is important for vegans, especially, to rely on either fortified foods, for example, fortified nutritional yeast is a popular one, or supplements to meet needs. Like I mentioned earlier, it is not difficult to find vegan items that are fortified with B12. Finally, in my opinion, the most common element people think of as being a concern for plant-based people is protein. But protein needs can be met on a plant-based diet if planned properly, like everything else I've said. Just to name a few, lentils, chickpeas, beans, nuts, tofu and edamame from soybeans, quinoa, and peas are all plant-based sources of protein. The key is to consume a variety of protein sources throughout the day to ensure you get all the essential amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. It is also important to consider complementary proteins, which may not be enough on their own, but combined with other sources can reach your protein needs. These don't need to be consumed at the same meal, but rather throughout the day. It is ideal to consume more plant-based protein than you would animal protein to meet the same goals. So, it is clear you can be vegan or vegetarian and still get all the nutrients you need. Therefore, if you were plant-based and still consuming some meat, dairy, or egg, it would not be too difficult to get everything you need from food. If not completely cutting out animal products, it may not be as necessary to rely on fortified foods, which may not be as easy for people with limited access to food options to find. There's too big of a difference between the average person's diet and a vegan diet for most people to go completely vegan, never mind individuals in correctional facilities. Anyways, from a health perspective, it is not necessarily better to completely cut out meat. So, if prisons were to go plant-based while still including some, but less of a focus on animal products, it is definitely possible to reach the nutrient requirements. According to Canada's Food Guide, it is better to focus on plant proteins anyway. Canada's Food Guide is a good template of what the average person should eat to be considered healthy, which is what people should be aiming to do. According to the Food Guide, the average meal for a Canadian should be half a plate of fruits and vegetables, a quarter of protein foods, and a quarter of whole grains, approximately. It also specifically mentions to choose plant sources of protein more regularly. Prisons should adapt to this plant-based meal planning just for following the Food Guide. Inmates should be offered the same opportunities to be healthy that the rest of society is encouraged to do so. It also says to eat less foods that are highly processed, which is in line with a plant-based diet as well. Limiting processed food can help in consuming less saturated fat, which we already know is not the best for you. So, the health benefits of integrating more plant-based options are evident and in line with Canada's Food Guide. But why should we make the health of prisoners a focus? Basic answer is that prisoners are people too and have a right to sufficient nutrition. Many people in prisons are nonviolent, in for drug crimes, or even innocent. In the US, the main cause of the increase in incarceration is drug crimes. The majority of inmates will get out eventually. They are not all in for murders or other more serious violent crimes, depending on how you look at it. Not to mention the race disparity of prisoners. The vast majority of inmates are people of color, but that's a topic for another video. Individuals who are incarcerated most often come from marginalized populations and have a poorer physical, mental, and/or social health than the rest of the society already. They have often not had proper opportunities to get help for health issues, whether acute or chronic. We can use prisons as an opportunity to improve health instead of decreasing health further in these people that are already disadvantaged. This can aid in a better transition back to society, while potentially learning about healthy food habits in prison instead of having a negative view of prison food. A major cause of death is malnutrition, both undernutrition and overnutrition, and occurs more often than it should in correctional facilities. We can't expect malnourished people to be the best members of society. Nutrition determines both physical and mental health. Physically, poor diets can lead to heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Encouraging healthier individuals who are getting proper nutrition can help decrease the risk of spreading communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases that threaten community health and helping pre-existing chronic conditions. Mentally and emotionally, diets rich in vitamins and other nutrients lead to better behavior, while poor diets can lead to behavioral and mood issues that cause people to act differently than they usually would. Symptoms include, but are not limited to, fatigue, irritability, nervousness, depression, anxiety, an inability to concentrate, and difficulty in performing simple tasks. I don't know about you, but when I'm hungry, I am not myself. Never mind trying to integrate back into your society and better yourself when you have not been properly nourished the entire time you've been in prison, which who knows how long that's been. Improving behavior can help prevent recidivism, aka reoffending. If the goal of incarceration is rehabilitation, nutrition needs to be a focus. Inmates are not getting a proper opportunity to better themselves if they are not nourished as well as they should be. If they are not bettering themselves and just end up back in prison right away, correctional facilities are not doing their job. I'm not saying everyone that reoffends does so because of poor nutrition, but it definitely doesn't help. And it is our duty to ensure they have the best opportunities to stay out of prison. We have to remember, most inmates will re-enter society eventually. Preventing reoffending will not only help the individual, but also help society as a whole. We want people to come out of prisons as valuable, responsible members of society, and nutrition and health is key to this rehabilitation. But unfortunately, and wrong in my opinion, meal planning does not take into account the connection between diet and rehabilitation. There have been studies that show healthier school meals lead to better behavior, including improvements in academics, increased attention spans, and less sick days. These same ideas can be used on inmates, but they aren't. Moving on, the big thing about prisons is that the individual's day-to-day life and routines are taken away. They don't get to see their family and friends regularly or do any of the things they are used to doing. The one constant in the life of inmates is food. Food becomes the main thing that anchors each day and the main thing that reminds them of their regular life outside of prison. The way we decide to feed prisoners and what we feed prisoners all comes down to society's opinion about prisoners and how they deserve to be treated. People think prisoners are all bad people who deserve to be punished and thus don't have a right to healthy food. But no matter how you look at it, prisoners are people too, and we have an ethical right to treat people with respect. The food we eat reflects our identities as people. Feeding people inadequate food just further proves the lack of care for inmates. To sum it up, it is possible to still get all your nutrients and be healthy while being plant-based, no matter what extent you are excluding foods. For inmates to have the best shot at being better people when released from prison, it is important to ensure they have access to healthy food and a healthy lifestyle while in prison, which is best done on a plant-based diet. Being in prison is bad enough. The least we can do is give them healthy food for the time they are in there. There are no benefits not caring about prisoners and what they eat, aside from if you think inmates deserve to be punished and have the worst quality of life imaginable. To me, that seems unfair, especially considering these people are often in for non-violent drug offenses or could very well be innocent. It is our ethical right to treat inmates with some human decency and feed them a diet that has an emphasis on plant-based meals, or at least give them this option, in order to decrease their chances for disease and mental or behavioral issues to ensure they have the best chance at being successful upon their exit from prison. Thank you all for watching. If you want to do some more reading, I have posted all the links to everything I discussed down below. See you next time. Bye.